The boardroom carried the scent of polished leather and something colder underneath it, the kind of atmosphere where careers end and fortunes change hands before anyone finishes their coffee. I lingered at the entrance, clutching a narrow leather portfolio, observing my sister Victoria perform the role she had rehearsed her entire life, the one who had everything under control. She occupied the head seat at a massive mahogany table surrounded by 20 chairs, presentation remote in her grip, walking Meridian Tech Solutions board through projected numbers for the third quarter. This was the software company our father had assembled from nothing in his home garage over 32 years. She hadn't spotted me yet. No one had. I'd chosen my appearance with intention, a dark navy blazer, jewelry kept to a minimum, hair drawn neatly back, the professional equivalent of disappearing into wallpaper. Speaking as interim CEO, Victoria announced in the measured tone she reserved for audiences. I've located several meaningful opportunities to reduce expenditure. The Veteran Employment Initiative, for example, has been pulling our profit margins down by 2.3% each year. In her framing, it was pure sentimentality our father had refused to release. That same initiative had connected 847 former service members with real careers in technology over 6 years. Our father, who had served as a Marine, viewed it as the ethical spine of the entire organization. Victoria viewed it as an inefficiency waiting to be corrected. Then her gaze landed on me. Something moved across her face instantly, that tightening along the jaw she had been refining since we were children whenever someone threatened to disrupt the story she was telling. "Emma, what exactly are you doing here? This meeting is private." She swiveled toward Martin, head of building security, stationed near the door. "Martin, escort my sister out, please. Personal conflicts have no place in a boardroom." Martin was 53, a former Army serviceman I had personally hired 8 years earlier when I was still VP of Operations. HR had flagged a gap in his employment history stemming from his return from combat deployment. I had seen what they had overlooked. He drew a slow breath and let the silence do its work before speaking. Ms. Anderson finalized the acquisition of 51.7% controlling interest last week through the estate settlement provision. Effective this Monday, she holds majority ownership. He paused, letting the weight of that settle across every face in the room. "She is your incoming chief executive." The silence that followed was the kind that happens right before something fundamental shifts. Victoria's color drained entirely. "That cannot be right. We received equal portions, 50% each." I moved to the chair directly opposite her and placed the portfolio on the table with quiet deliberation. Dad's 70% stake was split evenly between us, giving us each 35%. But you overlooked something. Mom held her own 30% completely separate from his estate. You forgot about Mom's shares entirely. What Victoria never anticipated was how I had actually spent those 8 months following our father's burial. She had positioned herself as interim CEO almost immediately, circulating the narrative that I was too emotionally raw to participate in business decisions. She told the board I was taking time away to grieve. She told our mother I was on the edge of a breakdown and needed distance from anything company-related. She told our younger brother Daniel I was withdrawing and being uncooperative. Each relationship was managed separately so that no one ever spoke to the others long enough to compare what they had been told. Mom sold me her 30% stake for precisely what she had originally paid in 1998, which was $180,000. It was not something I had requested. After watching Victoria function for 8 months, Mom recognized a calculation behind her daughter's eyes that she had seen before in her own mother, who had taken her inheritance from her back in 1973. The share transfer was executed properly through legal channels. Judge Morrison, a retired family court judge who had overseen our father's estate, confirmed every element of the transaction. The required notification was submitted the previous Monday. My ownership now stood at 51.7%. Victoria held 35%. The outstanding 13.3% belonged to employee stock options. Victoria's fingers gripped the table edge, a tremor running through her hands. "You acted behind my back." I kept my tone even. "I followed proper legal procedure, unlike what you have been doing." I opened the portfolio and began. Each page inside represented a separate unraveling. On June 15th, she had dissolved the veteran hiring program, recovering $340,000 per year in the process. That decision also eliminated the coordinator position held by Sarah Vance, a Marine Corps veteran decorated with 3 Purple Hearts who had personally placed 127 veterans into careers. Patricia, the board's HR lead, shifted noticeably in her seat. Victoria had described the role to her as redundant duplication. On July 3rd, she sold the company's community training facility for $1.8 million to a development group. That building had provided no-cost coding instruction to underserved neighborhoods since 2016, producing 2,430 graduates across 7 years, 64% of whom Meridian had hired directly. I passed copies of the purchase records to the board members. The acquiring entity was Pinnacle Development LLC, a company filed in Delaware just 3 months before the closing date. Its sole registered owner was Victoria Anderson. She had sold company-owned property to herself at a price 40% beneath what it was actually worth. An independent valuation had placed it at $3.1 million. Richard, Meridian's CFO, drew the documents toward himself, the muscles in his jaw working as he read through the figures. On August 10th, she had adjusted her own compensation from $180,000 to $420,000, immediately framing it as a standard market correction for a CEO-level role. The genuine market rate for a chief executive at a company of Meridian scale was $280,000. She had awarded herself a 133% pay increase during the same period she was eliminating programs for veterans. Victoria shoved her chair backward and rose. "I was holding this company together while I was what?" I responded, keeping my voice level. "Processing grief? No. I was building a record. Dad instilled that in me. He said paper will always outlast whatever was spoken." On September 22nd, she had moved to sell Meridian's proprietary software licensing to a competitor named Cortex Systems for $4.2 million. Independent market analysis valued that licensing at $11.8 million. She had been preparing to transfer a core company asset to a direct rival at a staggering loss. I produced another document. The VP of acquisitions at Cortex was a man named James Morrison, her fiancé. The email exchange I laid out included a message from him referencing their plans for a villa renovation once the deal was finalized. Patricia made a sharp sound. Richard's complexion had deepened to red. On October 5th, she had dismissed Michael Torres, Meridian's principal developer, citing performance deficiencies. Michael's code efficiency score sat at 98%, and he had originated 3 of the company's most commercially successful products. His termination package included a compelled non-disclosure agreement threatening a $500,000 penalty for any public criticism of company conduct. Judge Morrison had examined that document and characterized it as an unlawful restraint. Michael was engaged with an employment attorney and had been advised the agreement could be contested. "You have been methodically taking apart everything our father constructed," I said, "not to improve what's here, but to strip out whatever could be converted into personal gain before anyone noticed." Victoria's voice broke around the edges. You have no concept of what operating a company actually demands. You were always the one he favored. I was VP of operations for 6 years. I developed the entire project management framework from scratch. I closed our 3 largest client agreements. I built the veteran program you labeled as charity work. I leaned forward across the table. And yes, Dad and I were close because we held the same beliefs, that a company could generate profit and serve a genuine purpose simultaneously without one cancelling out the other. In September, everything had shifted when Mum called Daniel, who called me, and the 3 of us gathered around her kitchen table on a quiet Thursday afternoon and began matching up what each of us had separately been told. She said you had chosen to step back, Mom told me, her voice careful and measured, that the company brought up too much pain for you. Daniel added that Victoria had told him I was suffering panic responses and that raising business topics would destabilize me. I had shown them all 47 text messages sent to Victoria over 6 months in which I asked about board activity, financial direction, and strategic planning. Her replies had ranged from brief dismissals to silence. Family is not simply the people who carry the same blood, Mom said before the evening ended. It is the people who are present when blood is not sufficient. That was the night she offered to transfer her shares to me. I am calling for an emergency vote, I said, returning my attention to the room, to formally remove Victoria from the interim CEO position and establish permanent executive leadership. I am also requesting an immediate forensic review of all financial activity during her 8-month tenure. Richard moved his laptop in front of him. I'll second that. The vote returned unanimous. 8 in favor, none opposed. Victoria abstained, her face unreadable beneath the disbelief. I announced the immediate restoration of the veteran hiring program. Sarah Vance would be reached about resuming her coordinator role along with a written apology and full back pay for the wrongful termination. Michael Torres would receive his position back under identical terms to those he previously held. Patricia was already committing things to notes. The training center transaction would be legally challenged, the $1.8 million returned with penalties applied for self-dealing. If Pinnacle Development LLC chose to resist, the company would pursue civil fraud proceedings. You are dismantling my life, Victoria said, barely producing sound. I am dismantling the damage you caused, I replied. Those are not the same action. What followed unfolded with the deliberate rhythm of institutional accountability. During the first week, forensic accountants from Brennan and Associates reviewed every transaction Victoria had authorized throughout her tenure. Their completed report consumed 180 pages. The core finding identified $6.7 million in decisions requiring serious scrutiny, including undervalued disposals of company assets, inflated payments to consulting firms connected to her personal associates, and a coordinated pattern of stripping that financial modeling suggested would have rendered Meridian insolvent within 3 years. During the second week, the board voted to initiate legal proceedings. Victoria was formally stripped of every role she held within the company. Her remaining 35% ownership was transferred into a restricted trust she could neither draw from nor sell without board authorization, a structure our father had embedded into the company's legal architecture, apparently anticipating a scenario none of us had understood until now. He had observed something in Victoria that the rest of us had been too entangled to see clearly. During the third week, the SEC launched a formal investigation into the self-dealing conduct. Her legal team reached a negotiated settlement. Victoria surrendered 20% of her remaining shares back to the company, paid $2.4 million in restitution, and consented to a lifetime prohibition from holding any officer-level position in a publicly traded organization. During the fourth week, Sarah Vance returned to her role. Her first official act was to establish an annual memorial scholarship in our father's name, $50,000 each year designated for veterans seeking careers in technology. I authorized it without delay. 2 months in, Michael Torres prevailed in his legal challenge against the NDA, which was declared void. He rejoined Meridian as lead developer with a 30% salary increase and a new formal designation as Chief Technology Officer. 3 months in, the training center sale was legally reversed. Pinnacle Development LLC ceased to exist as an entity. The building reopened, now offering expanded course offerings along with complimentary childcare for evening students who were also raising families. 4 months in, Meridian's quarterly earnings reflected 23% growth. The company had brought on 47 veterans. Productivity benchmarks were climbing, staff morale had transformed. The organization our father had devoted his life to building was functioning again as he had intended. 6 months after the board meeting, I stood inside the training center's main hall watching 32 students complete their final day of the coding bootcamp. 19 were veterans. 13 were single parents whose communities had rarely offered them a path like this one. Every single one of them had received a job offer, 8 directly from Meridian, 24 from organizations in our partner network. Sarah stood a few feet away from me. Your father would be proud of what this has become. He would be proud of what you have built here, I told her back. Martin appeared in his pressed uniform. Miss Anderson, there is someone at the main entrance asking for you. It was Victoria. Following the board meeting, she had sent messages, beginning with anger, moving into desperation, eventually going quiet altogether. Our mother had made attempts to open a channel between us. I had declined each time. That chapter felt closed. Tell her I'm not available, I said. She says she wants to offer an apology. I held that information for a moment and considered it. The conclusion I had imagined for all of this had never featured an open door. But something my father had said surfaced in my memory. That forgiveness is not a debt anyone owes, but that a door can remain unlocked without being opened wide. Tell her I will agree to meet, I said at last, in 3 months, after she has completed the financial ethics program the SEC assigned her, after she has demonstrated genuine behavioral change through her actions rather than her words. I paused. And only if she puts in 20 volunteer hours at the Veteran Services Center, not as something she does for me, as something she does for herself. Martin acknowledged this and walked back toward the entrance. Sarah looked at me with one raised brow. That is more grace than she's earned. It comes with conditions, I said. If she genuinely wants to rebuild something, she can demonstrate it through consistent action over time. Whether she makes that choice belongs entirely to her. There is no space in my life for the version of her that caused all of this. But people are capable of genuine transformation when they choose to do the actual work required. Our father believed that without reservation. It was the reason he gave veterans the chance to start over when no one else would. The ledger was balanced now in every way that mattered. The company stood on solid footing. Its original mission had been recovered and restored. And I was finally leading the organization our father had always envisioned, one where generating profit and serving people were not forces in opposition, but partners occupying the same space.